Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at a new offering from Sea-Gull, and it's a bit complicated. Basically, the new brand is GT&FQ, and the model is Rider, hence why it says Rider, and the model number is M001. So technically, this is the Rider M001, which is what we will refer to it as, but in fact it does belong to Sea-Gull, and in turn this other company that belongs to Sea-Gull. So now we've got that out of the way, you can buy this from the Sea-Gull watch store, and currently it's priced at $140, which equals to about 100 British pounds. As you can see, it is a mechanical watch, and first things first, it is very, very good value for money. So we'll have a look at it in closer detail, all the different aspects of it, and discuss the specs as well to see why that is the case. So the RRP of it is a little bit more expensive. It's $300 or £210. So hopefully it never does actually, go for the RRP, and it is always at this current price because it is a brilliant watch for the money. So the movement, it is a Sea-Gull ST1780. You'll probably recognise the layout if you are a fan of perpetual watches, which I certainly am. It's exactly the same as their PR02 and PR01, which I reviewed, which is a very, very popular watch. That's $150, so around about the same price. So yeah, it's obviously made by Sea-Gull, the watch and the movement, so it makes sense that they put one of their own movements in. So we'll talk about that in a little bit further detail later on. The size-wise, it's 41mm in diameter, 12mm thick, and it has a lug-to-lug length of 47mm. So if I just put it on my 7¼ inch wrist, we'll see how it fits. Very nice. It weighs a mere 76 grams, including the straps. So despite it being automatic, it is, pretty lightweight. So that makes it a pretty comfortable wear. It has a sapphire crystal on the top, and in the exhibition case back, it's a standard mineral crystal. It's water resistant to just 50 meters, and the dial is like a silvered sunray brushed effect to it. So that's the specs. Let's have a look at it in closer detail then. So we might as well talk about the movement very first thing. So the Sea-Gull ST1780 is primarily featured with a power reserve indicator. So if I slowly wind it up, if I get it in focus. So if I wind it up, you'll notice the power reserve indicator will slowly rise. So now we're at 30 hours. Keep on going, and we're now at 35 hours. Obviously when you're wearing it and it's winding up, that goes up as well. Small running seconds hand at 6, and then at 2 we have the date indicator, which you advance by pushing this little button in here, and obviously it's just a push-pull crown, so we'll just pull it out and we can adjust the time like so. The movement itself is pretty ugly. I will be the first to admit that. It's very standard looking, and just the finishing, when I get the macro lens on, the finishing isn't the best either. For instance, on the top of this, the rotor. But for a price, for a watch of this price, it's probably not. You can't expect too much really, and it is still an automatic for an amazing price. So, in certain respects, you can't expect too much. But obviously, it's the back of the watch, so you're not always going to be looking at it. I personally do like seeing mechanical watches and seeing an exhibition case back, no matter how ugly the movement is, because it's still nice to see the innards and see it working away. But there we go. Okay, so moving on to the case. So the case is pretty impressive actually. There's one or two very nice little features that I wouldn't have expected. So first of all, just the general, you know, the finishing and the variation of finishing as well is very, very good. So we have a fully polished bezel which is applied, so that sets off the dial very nicely, and then a brushed main section, and then a fully polished case back and back of the thingy as well, back of the case. Now, one thing that has really impressed me is one that's not you know, it's not necessary whatsoever, but we have a very tiny slither of polished like shoulder here on each corner of the lugs. Now you can't necessarily see it very well in the camera, on the camera, but in the flesh, this is, you know, a really nice little touch, because it provides a little bit extra shimmer to the case, and it's just you know, something that you really wouldn't expect from a watch costing this much. So that's something that's really impressed me. On the case back, you know, the engraving is very good. The push-pull crown has a nice, decent R, even though, you know, the R is a little bit boring. It's still well embossed on the end of it. And then the pusher for the date is very well done as well. So yeah, the case itself is really impressive. It certainly exceeds expectations for the price. So moving on to the dial. Now, Sea-Gull have sort of, this is a homage to a certain Jaeger-LeCoultre. So in many respects, you know, the design isn't original, but obviously they're not going directly against the JLC, because the price difference is many thousands of pounds. So we do have JLC to thank for the design, but the way Ryder or Sea-Gull have executed it is really quite excellent for the price of the watch. You can't necessarily see it too much, but you notice we have this sunray effect to the dial. We'll be able to see it better with the macro lens on, but let me see if I can get a focus on it. So the main section of the dial has a sunray sunburst effect to it, and then each of these sub dials also have very slight textures to them as well, and they're slightly inset as well, with the slightly blued hands. I also like the way the dial sort of tapers out around the edge as well. It's slanted outwards to give a bit of a domed feel to the dial. Again, something that's probably more hassle than it's worth. So it's nice to see the effort here. And then all these applied hour markers, pitched and polished triangles. They're all, you know, can't really fault them. They're well made and well applied. The hands, the main hands, Dauphine hands, pitched as well, polished as well. So, you know, there's a nice amount of reflections going on when you're wearing the watch. It certainly makes it look more expensive than it is. I forgot to mention sapphire crystal on top as well. I'm not entirely sure if it has any anti-reflective coating, but you know, you can certainly read the dial perfectly fine. Legibility is good. So yeah, really impressive. The printing all seems fairly okay. Not, you know, not out of this world, but they will suffice. So then moving on to the strap. Again, something else that exceeds expectations, because usually on a watch around this price it's pretty terrible, and the strap is the first thing that you know, brands skimp on really to keep costs down. But the strap on this is very soft. The leather is surprisingly good, nice and thick, supple as well. It's not stiff when you first get it out of the box, and it feels very good on the wrist as well. We also have a fully polished buckle with Ryder relatively deeply etched on it as well. So yeah, all things are surprisingly good for the price. So let me just get the macro lens on then, and we can have a look at it in even closer detail. So starting off with the dial, let me just move the hand out of the way. So here we have the printing on the logo, printing around the date indicator as well, and there's the power reserve. As you can see, it could probably do with being a tiny bit fraction lighter and a little bit more refined, but you know, nothing that we can't expect too much really. You'll notice here we also have the sun ray effect in the background as well, sunburst effect, so that really captures the light nicely. So all of these subdials then have a nice gentle texture to them as well, concentric circular pattern on those two, and then this one actually doesn't have a pattern, it's just like a matte finish to it. You notice these three hands, they're all slightly blued as well. Moving on to the Dauphine hands, nicely pitched, there we go, and then hour markers, also pretty nicely made, and then we can see that little dip of the corner of the dial as well. Let me just give the case a tiny bit of a wipe down. So let's have a look. So here we have the brushed side and the polished bezel, and then this is the bit that's impressed me so much, just a tiny polished slither here on the corner, like the shoulder of the lugs. You know, it's so surprisingly well refined. You can see the sharp edges there, and the vast difference between the brushing, different angles as well. You know, something that you really wouldn't expect on a watch costing this much. That's really impressed me. Here's the little tiny pusher inset into the case for the date, and then we have the R embossed in the crown as well, and there's the side of the crown. See the grip there is pretty decent as well. So moving on to the case back, just give that a wipe. Surrounding the exhibition window, we have a variety of pieces of information, specifics, pretty nicely engraved, and then obviously the rear of the case is also polished as well. So moving on to the movement whilst we're here then, just get it the right way up, here we can see it ticking away. So if we look at the actual, like the top bridge and also the rotor, the finishing is pretty poor, to be honest. As you can see, it's a bit grubby, not particularly well finished or anything like that. And looking at this main bridge here, you can see again it's a little not quite finished as much as you would have liked. But hey, if it works, I suppose it works. And if you do get a grubby one like this one, you could always get it serviced or cleaned up from a watchsmith. So there we go. So yeah, that's probably the only negative I have really about the entire watch, is the visual quality of the movement itself. So moving on to the leather strap, here it is on the top. We have this embossed croc pattern. Black stitching on the top as well. There's the holes. Then on the underside it's nice and soft looking as well. And this side we can see we've got a rider print on it, and there's a stitching along there. And then finally we have the rider logo, pretty deeply etched on the buckle as well. Okay, so would I buy this watch for £100? Absolutely. Would I recommend it for £100? Absolutely. everything about it is pretty magnificent for the price, really. Even at the full RRP of around £200, I still think it's good. It's obviously not as good value for money, but it is still very good value for money, even at the RRP, because it's such a nice design, thanks to obviously Jaeger LeCoultre. But the finishing of it is so good as well. You know, the dial itself is all very nicely put together. Sure, the movement is ugly as sin, but you know, that you don't usually see that when you're wearing it anyway. And just the you know, the general attention to detail is quite surprising, and it really looks like, you know, a watch that is worth much more than it is when you're wearing it, and you do get a lot of comments from wearing it. So I personally really like it. I think the size is great. The looks of it is great as well. It feels really good quality for the price as well, and obviously, as we have looked at it in such in depth, you know, there's no major catastrophes about it when you're wearing it. So I would highly recommend it, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant watch for £100. So this was the Sea-Gull GT&FQ Rider M001, and that's what it's all about.